Okay, tonight we're going to talk about everything related to siblings. For those of us who have more than one child, or if you have one child and you have lots of playmates, we're going to find out what causes children conflict and how best can we as the adults step in, help them resolve it, and even when we should step in and how we should step in. So thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Judy Arnall, and I am a brain and child development specialist. And I'm a bit of an idealist because I read the research, I go to conferences, I know what to tell parents when they're faced with issues with their children. But again, too, I'm also a realist. I have 5 children of my own. And they've had a lot of years of sibling squabbles. Absolutely. Growing up, they had a lot of squabbles. I'm happy to say now that they're all adults, they get along pretty good. And I think it's, a lot of it is what is nature, what we say is nature, but a lot of it is nurture too, and how you resolve those things. So I'm also an author. I've written a few books on non-punitive parenting and non-punitive education. And I'm happy to say you can raise kids without punishment at all. I stopped using all punishments when my oldest was age 8. And since then, I've raised 5 teenagers without ever taking the door off their room, taking away their phones. And I'm quite proud of them. 3 are university graduates. 1 is there, 1 is a master's student, and 1 is just wrapping up high school. So I'm very proud of these guys. So one of my books is Discipline Without Distress, and that's about how to raise kids without punishment. The other book is Parenting with Patience, and that's about how to get a control of our anger. And a lot of what I talk about tonight is going to be from Parenting with Patience. And it's about helping our kids handle their anger, and that's a big part of sibling issues. I put out a DVD on screen time, although it's about 10 years old right now, but the parenting tips on it are still relevant today. And a little journal, a parenting journal on the last word of parenting advice, which just says, trust yourself. And the latest book is Attachment Parenting Tips. And all it is tips from 23 years of facilitating parent groups. I have a lot of parent input into this on non-punitive ways to handle different problems. And the self-directed education book called Unschooling to University on non-punitive education practices. A lot have been translated into different languages, and I also teach online courses. If you're interested, come to my website on professionalparenting.ca. You'll see what's currently being offered. Okay, and I think parents, your job is amazing. There's no other job in the world that is as hard and as rewarding as parenting, and really you should have a tip jar at your table. I did that. I put a tip jar in and I got some quarters and little chocolate bars. And then I put a wife's tip jar in the laundry room, and I put a little $50 bill in there to set the precedent. And I got nothing more. So I don't do laundry in my house anymore. And teachers should have a tip jar too. They do a lot of parenting while their kids are away during the day. Okay, so a lot of these slides I'm not going to talk about, but a few I will. Where does this information come from? These are the organizations that I have pulled material from, and the books I've pulled material from. So tonight we're going to look at why do siblings fight, when should parents jump in, and how to create more peace at home. I'm going to share what's worked in our house and what parents have shared with me. So I'm just going to turn the video off here, and I'll come back at the end and say goodbye. So what is sibling rivalry? According to Dr. Spock, who was the child guru of the 60s, he states it's a normal jostling of siblings for their parents' love and attention. And I love this quote: "Every child should be an only child in his parents' eyes, a unique person, one of a kind," by Carol and Andrew Calladine. And Jean Ilsley Clark says, "Children will take 100% of your attention if you can give it. It's a basic need." That there lies in the problem with parents and siblings. Parents have limited time. Children have lots of time and need parents. And oftentimes they don't want to divide parents' love and attention. So conflicts are normal in every relationship, whether it be partner-partner, parent-child, child-child. It occurs over fences between neighbors, over borders between countries, over cleaning up the kitchen, over cleaning up the environment, in the bedroom, in the boardroom, between people who love each other and people who hate each other. And by the way, this is one of my children putting glow-in-the-dark Play-Doh on the pictures of his siblings. Gotta love it. One thing we know is we don't own our children's relationships with each other. They own them. And although we can facilitate the environment so that they get along better with each other, ultimately they will decide if they're going to have a really close relationship with each other. These are my two kids taking the train together, putting up with each other. Now, children are unique. Ask a parent of one child if they believe in the nurture or the nature philosophy of parenting, and they'll say nature. Ask a parent of two or more children, do you believe in the nurture or nature philosophy of parenting? And they will say definitely, definitely the nature. So we all know children are very, very different. They have different gender, birth order, age and stage of development, temperament, and personality. And of these, gender doesn't matter so much in regards to how well siblings get along. And the same with birth order. That doesn't matter much about how siblings get along. Those two characteristics are very much influenced by environment, the social norms that we attach, that we may treat our children differently if they're female or of another fluid gender. We may treat our children differently, being that they're firstborn or they're the baby of the family. Definitely, we have a great input into how we treat our children. Whereas age and stage, temperament, and personality are more the nature part of parenting. Your children are born with distinct temperaments, personalities, and they go through distinct stages of development. And that can influence their relations with each other. So gender and birth order is more the nurturing part. These three are more the nature part. So let's look at the nature part. So which age group you have of children definitely depends on how well they get on. And we know the brain grows from the bottom to the top and from the back to the front. And as the brain grows from the back to the front, children have more self-control. This is a map that shows you the development of children's self-control. And as you can see here, from 0 to 3, children have very limited self-control, which is housed in the frontal lobe and the prefrontal lobe of the brain. So if you have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, chances are if they have a conflict with each other, they're both going to be hitting each other. There's not much difference in how much self-control they have. If you have a 3-year-old child and a 7-year-old child, as you can see by the chart, there's a big leap in development between those ages. You can expect your 7-year-old to understand the need to refrain from hitting each other, but you can't really expect that from the 3-year-old. And then try and explain that to your 7-year-old. And same with your 10-year-old versus your 13-year-old. You pretty well can expect them both to use their words rather than hitting each other. So definitely age and stage does matter on how well they get along with each other. Temperament is also a factor in who gets along with who. Now, every child's born with a temperament, and it stays with them their whole life. It doesn't change. And out of 5 kids, I've had 3 different temperaments all along the continuum. I've had 3 children classified as spirited or spicy children, and I've had 1 that is really easygoing and 1 that is slow to warm up. One of these, you probably can tell which one is the most spirited of the spirited. So temperament is the how much of personality. Children are born with a temperament and live with it all their lives. And we began research into temperament and development in the 1950s. And we know so much more about it now that in the last 10 years, our research into brain development and personality and temperament has just exploded so much. So like I said, temperament is on a continuum from easygoing to slow to warm to high need spirited children. And about 40% of all children are born easygoing, about 15% slow to warm, and about 10 to 15% are those spicy children. How is temperament defined? If a child has 5 or more of the 8 characteristics, they're probably more on that side of the continuum. There are really good temperament charts out there and questionnaires that you can use to determine which temperament your child is. Temperament is also rooted in the brain. For easygoing children, they have more left frontal brain activity, and for more spicy children, they have more right frontal brain activity. So the 8 temperament characteristics are distractibility, sensitivity, adaptability, intensity, body functions, activity level, first reaction, and moods. So as you can see here, on the easygoing side, children are more distractible, they're easygoing, they're more adaptable, they're very lighthearted, less energy, they have regular body functions, they have a low activity level, their first reaction is positive. I have to change this. And their mood is even keeled. For spicier children, they're more persistent, they're more sensitive, they take a longer time to adjust, they have incredible energy and intensity, they're irregular in their body functions, they have a high activity level, their first reaction is usually negative, and they're very moody. Now, if you have 2 children who are spicy, you're going to have a lot of sibling conflict. Because if you look at their temperament traits, they're both persistent. One is not going to give up. They're both going to go at it. They're both very sensitive to comments, to looks from each other, to perceived incidences of unfairness. And they put a lot of intensity and energy into their anger to each other. Their first reaction is probably negative, which means that if one sibling does something they don't like, it's going to be not so nice. Now, if you have one child that's more on the easygoing side and one child that's more on the spicy side, they're going to be a pair that get along a lot better, because the easygoing child is not going to really care about all the times they're going to probably give in more to the spicy child. So if you have a spicy child, their friends are going to be more easygoing. Oftentimes, children who are spicy do not have spicy friends, just because the incidence of conflict is that much more. Personality. Is your child an introvert or an extrovert? Oftentimes, introverts like to hang around with other introverts because they can enjoy more quiet time together that gives them energy. where extroverts like to hang out with extroverts because that feeds their energy and gives them opportunities to have socialization. So personality has to be a good fit too. So if you have two introverts or two extroverts, that's probably better than one of the other. So everything's connected. Oftentimes we ask parents in classes, what are qualities you wish to see in your child's relationships with each other as adults? And what are behaviors that are causing issues right now? How you help your child deal with issues now can give you what your child's relationships are going to be as adults. And basically, fights are about feelings. When it all boils down to stuff, it's about feelings. So the more we can help our children understand their feelings, express their feelings, and then sort out the issue, the better we can help them get along with each other. So the more feelings are expressed in the family, the better the emotional health of the child and the better the sibling relationship. Oftentimes, when we're faced with conflict, though, our short-run goals are stop fighting now. That's what we want. And that's a lofty goal, but we also have to keep in mind our long-run goals. Is what we're doing, is it going to create connection and belonging in the family? If we punish our children for fighting with each other, is that going to stir up good feelings between each other in the long run? And we want to teach our kids life skills on how to get along with each other, with their future relationships. It all begins in the sibling relationships and in the family. If we can teach our kids assertiveness, communication, and conflict resolution skills, they will have a lot of practice for their future relationships, and they will have more success in the future because of that. So in order to make kids do better, we must make them feel bad. That's a myth. Children who feel better do better. So you always want a positive approach to sibling conflict rather than a negative approach. Many parents punish their children for having conflicts with each other, and that doesn't get at the true need or feelings behind the behavior. It just puts a lid on it until it boils over. We need to help children address what their feelings are, and then the good feelings in sibling relationships can come out. But not punishing your children does have more benefits too. Children have better social skills because they're more practiced in communication, problem solving, and resolving those conflicts. Okay, the other thing to remember is fair isn't equal. It's not everybody getting the same thing. Fair is everybody getting what they need. So rather than try and make everything super, super equal among your children, make everybody get what they need. And everyone's needs are going to be different. And if you assure everyone that when you need something, you're going to get your needs met, people feel more secure. Okay, let's look at the 4 reasons children fight. These are the 4 basic reasons most children have conflicts. And as you can see, very often there are feelings involved. Feeling ignored, feeling bored, feeling victimized, feeling hate, jealousy, and unworthiness. And when children are feeling these things, it comes out into conflict with their siblings. Okay, number 1 is boredom. When children are bored, what do? It's so much fun to pick on a sibling, handy sibling or playmate, because, hey, it gives you something to do. So the best practices when children are fighting because they're bored is obviously give them something to do. Excuse me. Redirect them into a new activity And don't punish them because they're bored. Give them something to do. Make sure you change the surroundings so it's something interesting, something engaging, that they will turn their focus from each other to something new to do. That one's pretty easy to fix. Number 2 is attention. This is, as Jean Ilsley Clark says, a basic need. Children absolutely need attention. Whether they take it in positive ways or in negative ways, attention is attention. So you want to give it in positive ways. Do not use punishment. And if they're fighting for attention, ignore it. But of course, if somebody is getting hurt, absolutely you have to step in. You cannot allow children to hurt each other. But be sure to give lots of attention when they're not squabbling. Very often as parents, we don't want to disturb the magic when kids are sitting there playing nicely together. It's like, I don't want to say anything because then it'll ruin it. But that's a good time to say something. Use your iMessage. Say, I'm so happy to see you guys playing together so nicely and taking turns with the cars. And that's good attention, and even better if you get down and play with them. Notice cooperative behavior. Every time a child's cooperative, say something. Say, I really appreciate when you help me clear the table. I love it when you go get your shoes on and I don't have to ask you 6 times. And the big part of attention is one-on-one time. If you're having a really bad week with sibling fighting, the best thing you can do is take each child out one-on-one. And I did this too. My partner was away working in another country, and I would hire a babysitter for the rest and take each child out on some special time. And it helps. It really, really helps kids get along better. And the third one is issues. So acknowledge the feelings. Every child is going to have real issues. Computer time. It's my turn. I want some time on the game. Those are real issues that you can take some time to show kids how to resolve issues of conflict. And yes, it's time consuming, but it's like a bank. The money and the time you put into it now pays off later, because later then they know how to resolve issues through problem solving. But first thing you have to do with issues is you have to acknowledge their feelings. Let each of them express how they feel. Jared here might feel anxious because he wants a turn on the game. Yet Josh here, he feels upset because he's not done leveling up and he doesn't want to give it up till he reaches a level. They both have valid feelings. And if you acknowledge the feelings, they learn how to acknowledge feelings with each other. And then you can start working on the problem. You can teach them how to compromise. You can teach them how to solve the problem. And it really helps beforehand to create rules together, parent and the child. And that way, everybody knows the rules. So under age 3, it's best to say, no, we don't hit or bite if they're starting to attack each other. Show them how to express their anger and do it over and over and over and over again, because that's how children learn. They build those connections in their brains through repetition. You can use compromising ways such as trading, redirecting one sibling to somewhere else using a timer. For ages 4 and up, ways to work it out are teach them their I statements. I'm annoyed because I want a turn. Teach them how to problem solve, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Teach them how to compromise. Okay, well, how about the first person who gets a turn gets a shorter turn than the person who has to wait? Ways to work it out is rock, paper, scissors. Sometimes worked in our house. Picking a number between 1 and 10, tossing a coin. All of those have a winner and a loser though. When you problem solve, you often get people who you want to work to win-win solutions. And last, you can create schedules of when things can happen. Now, your job as the adult in the conflict is you're not going to be the judge and decide who does what. What you're going to do is step back and become the facilitator to help the children work it out between them. So you move from judge to facilitator. You're not going to decide anything. You're going to help the kids decide. Okay, I'm not going to do this. I statements are basic statements like I feel, and then a feeling word, when, and then the behavior that you're feeling upset about, and because, why it costs you in time and energy. So you can teach kids to say, I feel angry when you hog the computer because I need a turn too, and I have to go to the dentist in 10 minutes. That's a very good 3-part I statement. And the last reason children fight is the reason that drives parents up the wall. It's when issues are not resolved fairly and the kids feel resentment. So what they do is they start picking on each other when parents are not noticing. And they notice. It's a form of bullying that they target the other sibling and drive them crazy. It may be a look, it may be a pinch, it may be hiding their toys. It's underground resentment that is exhibited in behavior. How you want to resolve that is you want to notice good behavior. When kids are being nice to each other, notice and acknowledge it. Do not label or compare your children. Don't say, oh, you're the math one, or you're the oldest, you should know better, because feelings don't know better. Children feel what they feel, and all feelings are okay. We have limits on behavior, but we don't have limits on feelings. And notice their individual accomplishments. Instead of saying, wow, you were always the math whiz, I knew you could do well, just acknowledge that, yes, you aced that math test, because you can also say that to the other sibling. You aced your math test. Not one child has to take the role of the math whiz, because what that does is says to the other child, I have the math whiz role. You can't be it. And oftentimes the child won't do well in math because that role is already taken. So notice individual accomplishments. Avoid punishment. Punishment increases sibling animosity. So you want to not punish, help them work it out and accept all their feelings and give attention. Now, oftentimes children just annoy each other. So in our house, we have all our gaming computers set up in one room. So the children are sitting side by side from each other. And when they're in a snit with each other, next, where their chairs are sitting together and they start annoying each other. And instead of actually leaving, what they do is say, Mom, he's bugging me. Well, that's when you teach them the adult method of handling annoying people. And this is a skill they can use when they grow up. If you're on a plane and the person behind you is kicking your seat, you basically have 3 choices. You can leave, negotiate, or surrender. I talk about these choices in the book, Parenting with Patience. So you can leave. You can go, get up, and find another seat. You can negotiate, which means you can turn around, give that person your iMessage. I'm feeling awake when my seat is being kicked because it's keeping me awake. Could you stop? And hopefully that person will stop. And you can surrender. You could just change yourself, ignore it, and let it go, which is one of the hardest things to do. And that is a 3-step method of handling annoying people that you want to teach your child. You can teach your child, you can either leave, which is remove oneself from your sibling. You can stay and negotiate. You can say, okay, this is a problem for me. Let's fix it. Let's work something out here. Or you can ignore it and let it go. And very often, probably leave is the best situation. I often get my kids saying, well, why do I have to be the one to leave? Why can't you make them leave? And I say to them, well, it's because you are taking control of the situation and solving the problem for yourself. That gives you empowerment. Yes, maybe it's not fair, but you can control yourself. You cannot control another person. And that's a very good lesson to teach kids, which is a life skill. You can't control that person on the plane kicking your seat. You can only control what you do. And you have 3 choices. You leave, you try to negotiate, or you surrender. And oftentimes for kids, removing themselves or ignoring it and letting it go, it's ignoring and letting it go is the hardest one. But removing themselves or staying to negotiate is probably 2 of the best ones. Okay, you as an adult do not want to put your kids in timeout. It causes many more problems than it helps. For one thing, it tries to force change in another person instead of changing ourselves. And like I said, we all can only change ourselves. It gives negative attention to the situation rather than positive. It teaches submission to a bigger authority. It can incite anger, resentment, and frustration, and increases sibling hostility. It models power and not peace. And it teaches it's a punishment, not a life skill. So I wouldn't do time out, I would do time in. Time in actually teaches self-control. So oftentimes we say to children, okay, you're not allowed to hit. You're not allowed to bite your sibling. You're not allowed to take their things. You're not allowed to kick them. You're not allowed to pinch them. We have a no list a mile long of things they can't do when they're angry. But we often don't give kids a yes list. Now remember, that self-control, that ability to use their words when they're angry and say, I feel angry at you, does not kick in until children are at least age 7. So what can we teach kids to do until they can use their words when they're angry instead of using their bodies when they're angry? We teach them the yes list. So it's okay to tell kids, don't do this, but we have to tell kids, do this. You need to give them the yes list. These are things they can do to express their anger and their frustration in the moment. I'm not going to talk about these, but these are really good things to redirect kids to. And time in is helping them handle their anger. We don't say to kids, oh, take this math book and go to your room and come out when you've learned the math. Yet we do that with our children's emotions. We say, go to your room with all your emotions and come out when you're calmer. That can incite power struggles and frustration and anger in children. It escalates things. Unless you have a really easygoing child who actually does that. I didn't have those. But the yes list is time in with your child and helping them redirect to one of these ways they can express their anger until they can use their words. So this works really good for the under 6s. And a lot of these work good for the over 6s. Shoot basketball hoops, talk it out is what they can do when they're older. So we don't want to do time out. Here's the punishment timeout. This does not help sibling issues when the root cause is sibling issues. Time in, these things do help children calm down and get a grip before they can solve the problem. We're raising an entire generation of adults that will only be adverse to taking a timeout because they've only experienced it as a punishment in childhood. It's a great life skill. If you want to teach your kids how to take a timeout, you do it. model it yourself. Take your time out. And oftentimes, if kids are fighting and we want to discipline or fix it in the moment, we make bad choices when we're angry. We want to get ourselves calm first, then we want to get our kids calm, and then we want to solve the problem. And these are outlined in chapters in Parenting with Patience. So there are many ways to calm down. Again, here's some more ways that we can calm down and we can show our kids how to calm down. A lot of these, this is our adult yes list. A lot of these are also on the children's yes list: crying, stomping, talking to a friend. But, we have our favorites. So let's talk about, we talked about the 4 reasons children fight, and we talked about how to get kids to calm down. Nobody works good in the heat of the moment. So you want to get kids to calm down before you decide issues. Actually, one of my best ways to get kids to calm down is to grab each one by the hand, sit on the couch, you between them, and start reading a storybook. And before you know it, they will stop trying to poke each other around you or give each other dirty looks, and they will be listening to the story. And that way, everybody's calmed down, and you give them a little bit of literacy in there too. So it's a good way. Have some books on the coffee table. Just sit there, calm down, don't let them hit each other. Keep reading. Gives you focus too. Okay, so let's say everybody's calmed down. Now, what can you do to decide issues? Because remember, number 3 issues is the big one of why children fight. Okay, we often say play nice, but really, children don't play well until the school age years. They really don't. If you're going to play group and you expect toddlers to handle each other well, they don't. If you have one ride-on toy, you're going to have toddler fights forever. So children play solitary until about a year, and then toddler years, they play parallel. They don't associate with each other. They don't play with each other. They grab each other's toys. That is normal. That doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. From 2 to 3 years, it's more associative play. So they might trade toys, or they might look and watch other children, but they don't have the brain development to actually engage in cooperative play. By age 3 to 5, they do. They start growing their imaginations. They start talking. They start playing make-believe. They start role-playing. It's a really good age to play together, to start play dates. But until then, you're probably just keeping everyone safe and damage control. That's what I say. And remember, age 3 is when they start having that self-control, that executive function ability to start playing nicer. And the real play starts about age 6 to 12. That's when they really get going on play. And of course, they play again in the teen years, but values determines how they play, where 6 to 12, it's more common shared interests. Okay, so let's talk about compromise. Teaching kids to compromise is a good skill. Like I said, if you have different temperament siblings, usually one child is going to give in a lot more than another child. And unless they're complaining, that's okay. As long as when that child doesn't want to give in, you back them up. Because there will be times they don't want to give in, and back them up. But if they're willing to compromise other times, that's great. They're learning a really good life skill that some siblings are more spicy and difficult, and sometimes it's just not worth the conflict. In our house, we had a bigger person button. We made this ourselves, and yeah, it was very cheesy, but I'm surprised at the number of times where the person who gave in or gave a little more got to wear the bigger person button for the day, and it really worked. They loved it. So you might want to try that. Now, collaboration is problem solving, and that's for usually age 3 and up. They have to be willing to talk because obviously it involves talk. So talking is working out what people's needs are. If you have one orange and two children and they both want the whole orange, can you work it out? When I pose this to my classes, they often say, no, they can't work it out. But yes, they can. And the clue here is finding out why each child needs the orange. One child needs the orange to make juice. The other child needs the orange peel to make orange zest for a recipe. So yes, now one orange can fit for two children. So it's finding out needs, which is all about problem solving. Problem solving is not you against me, it's us working together against the problem. So working the problem, not the person. And when you work the problem, you have to validate your needs and my needs the same. Each child's needs are valid and should be treated as important. So what that is getting kids to say, okay, what can we do that meets your needs, but also your siblings' needs? And coming up with ideas. And not poo-pooing ideas until you really go through them together and brainstorm a whole page of ideas and then choose what meets both needs. And then you do it, you write it down, and then in a week you check back, is it working? So we did this so many times with 5 kids. This was our main way to work out problems. But when your kids become teenagers and they're conflicting with each other, you can say, you guys know how to problem solve, work it out, and you can leave because you've already done this so many times with them and taught them the process. I remember even when my kids came home from university, yes, they would fight over who got the laundry machine on Saturday. And they had their baskets lined up and it was like, wait, I get it now. No, I need this. So I said to them, you guys work it out. You know how. So they would get together and talk about, okay, what are my needs? I need the shirt to wear tonight. I'm going out. But my needs are, I am busy all day tomorrow and can't do laundry. So then they worked it out. They figured out who got to do. And the beauty about it is they come up with such amazing creative needs. Maybe, brother can throw his shirt into sister's laundry and just get that shirt washed. Or there's lots of ways to work it out. And it's tapping into children's creativity to figure out ways to work it out for everybody. The beauty about problem solving is nobody loses. Everybody gets their needs met. And it's the best form of discipline for ages 3 and up when kids start talking. Okay, let's talk about apologies. Apologies are the social bandage. They're great, but should parents make one child apologize to the other? I always say, nudge it, but don't force it. Yes, it's the right thing to do, and it's even better if you model it. You could say, and this is an example where my child was fighting with another child on a play date, and he went and he bonked the other child over the head with a tube, and I felt really bad. He was angry. He was not apologizing. So I went to the child in front of him and I said, my son doesn't have the words right now, but he's feeling sorry and I'm feeling very sorry for you. And we apologize. And when he has the words, he will probably come and apologize too. And when he calmed down, he did. If kids calm down and they're not in the heat of the moment, they will apologize. So it's best to, yes, apply the social bandage so that the other parent doesn't get mad at you and knows that you're dealing with the situation. But you don't force your kids to do it. Apologies have to come from the heart. Model it so they know what to say, they know what to do, and allow them to calm down first. And remember, there are many love languages. They may apologize by giving the child a hug or a stuffy. Maybe they don't have the words, but there are many ways to show apologies. Okay, what about kids that tattle? There's a difference between tattling and telling. Tattling is to get somebody into trouble. And for those, I would just ignore them as the adult. But if they're tattling to get somebody help, I would respond. And that's something you want to encourage is if someone needs help, absolutely tattle. What are more ways to create peace at home? If you have toddlers, like I said, have the same toys. Even then, they're going to fight and everyone's going to want the red one, even though it's the same thing. So as much as possible, have many toys the same. Don't force them to share until at least age 3. Children do not have a sense of ownership until age 3. And even then, they may not want to give it up. So don't force sharing. And here's one, allow non-sharing. That was a big one in our family. All our kids were allowed to say, no, I don't want to share my toy. If they didn't want to share their toys on play dates or with siblings, they had to play with that toy in their room with the door closed, because that's not fair to taunt somebody. So same with a chocolate bar. If they didn't want to share a chocolate bar, and we actually told our friends on play dates, we said this too, if you're not going to share, you can't eat a chocolate bar in front of people and put it away. It's just good manners. But the ability to allow children to say, no, I don't want to share, actually encourages the inverse, because it empowers them to have control, and they love it. And when they have control, they also learn that other people have control. And they're going to find out very fast that if they want to play with their siblings' toys, maybe they should say yes a few more times so that they get to encounter yeses too. So it's kind of interesting. It's hard to believe it works, but it does work. Kids become more shareable with their stuff if they have the power to say no. So if your children are 5 and up, allow them to have their own friends. Maybe they don't want to play with siblings when they have friends over. That's okay. Under that, again, they have very little self-control, so friends are shareable. Preschoolers until about age 8 are very sore losers in games. I remember up until age 8, we tended to pack away the games that would really incite frustration and anger in our kids. Cooperative games are so much better. Teach your kids to ask for permission to use each other's things. This goes for parents and children and child. So ask permission when you want to use another person's possessions, and they will let you have it more often because they want to use your things too. Model that respect in the whole family, and it will become a family value. Rethink group gifts. I remember the year I gave one child the Nintendo 64 and another child the Game Boy for Christmas. Well, guess what? Everybody wanted to play the Nintendo 64. So we either give a group gift, or we give the gift that everyone's going to want to play, or the movie that everyone's going to watch. We give it to each other, partners. I give it to my husband. And then the kids, nobody owns it other than him. So the kids have equal rights to it. More tips. Oh, I cannot restate one time. Put it in the calendar. Each month, set aside one day. We usually choose our child's birth date. So if our child was born on January 6th, the 6th of every month, we would set aside that evening to spend time on whatever that child wants to do. My partner and me would get a sitter and take that child out and do something fun. And on that topic, it's very good to do the same with your partner too. On the time, choose the anniversary date you got together, and every date that month, make sure you spend some one-on-one time with them. We give our children choice in chores, not the choice of doing chores or not, and they don't get paid for them because they don't have the opportunity to buy their way out of them. Say, no, I don't need money this week. I'm not doing chores. So we give them lots of choices. And here's our little chore chart. Notice everyone in the family gets chores to do, and they get to choose. And the faster they choose, the more fun the chores they get to do. Every child should have their own sanctuary. Even if they don't have their own room, they should have their own section of the room or corner of the room that is theirs alone. And everybody has to ask permission if they're going in there. And I already talked about allow each child to say no. And sometimes, contracts help on things that they share, like the TV, the computers, the iPads, things like that. Draw up contracts. That's involved in problem solving. Okay, announcing I'm offended is basically telling the world you can't control your own emotions, so everyone else should do it for you. We often told our kids that. You can feel angry, you can feel frustrated, you can feel offended, but there are limits on behavior. No limits on feelings, limits on behavior. And look at the feelings. Sometimes the best conflict tool ever is a hug. If your kids are fighting, they're upset with each other, give them a hug. It's good modeling. It starts from a place of compassion and love. And the teaching sinks in after everyone's calm. Talk about it after everyone's calm. Give unconditional love. So yes, your siblings can have great relationships. My kids are 10 years apart from the oldest to the youngest, and they love playing together to this day. This is them playing Dungeons and Dragons together because the sibling bond is lifelong. Brothers and sisters are friends that never have to go home. And the sibling bond is longer than parent-child and also partner-partner. You will be giving your kids a gift to have siblings that they can depend on, and they love each other. I will assure you. There's more information if you are looking at courses. Parent effectiveness training is really good. Siblings Without Rivalry is a really good succession course. Books are Loving Each One Best, Hold On to Your Kids, Positive Discipline and Everyday Parenting. Although those two don't specifically talk about siblings, Loving Each One Best does. Discipline Without Distress and Siblings Without Rivalry and Parenting with Patience all address sibling issues in the books too. So lots of help there if you are interested in more information. So I'm just going to end with this. I talk about this in birth order and why you love each child the best. Dear firstborn, I've always loved you best because you were our first miracle. You were the genesis of a relationship and the fulfillment of young love. You sustained us through the hamburger years, the first apartment, our first mode of transportation, and the 7-inch TV we paid on for 36 months. You were new, had unused grandparents, and enough clothes for a set of triplets. You were the original model for a mom and dad who were trying to work the bugs out. You got the strained lamb, the open safety pins, and 3-hour naps. You were the beginning. Yeah, okay, this poem's a bit dated. Dear middle child, I've always loved you best because you drew a tough spot in the family and it made you stronger for it. You cried less, had more patience, wore faded hand-me-downs, and never in your life did anything first. But it made you more special. You were the one we relaxed with, who helped us realize a dog could kiss you and you wouldn't get sick. You could cross the street by yourself long before you were old enough to get married, and you helped us understand that the world wouldn't collapse if you went to bed with dirty feet. You were the child of our busy, ambitious years. Without you, we would never have survived the job changes and the tedium and routineness that is relationships. Dear last born, I've always loved you best because while endings are generally sad, you are such a joy. You readily accepted the mild string bibs, the lower bunk, the cracked baseball bat, the baby book that had nothing written in it except a recipe for graham cracker pie crust that someone had jammed between the pages. You were the one we held on so tightly. You darkened our hair, quickened our steps, squared our shoulders, restored our vision, and gave us a sense of humor that security, maturity, and durability can't provide. When your hairline takes on the shape of Lake Erie and your own children tower over you, you will still be our baby. And this is by Irma Bombach. And I want to say this poem encapsulates that you are a different parent for every child in the birth order, and that's okay. I remember my firstborn, he he got a whole lot of attention the first year, but then he had to share his parents for the next 4 children. And I always felt bad of that. And I felt bad for the last child who never, ever got parents on his own. But actually now he does, now that all the other kids have flown the nest and he has parents to himself at this end. And my firstborn has parents that, always practice and always learned more because he was the firstborn. We got the beginning. So you are a different parent for every child in the family, and that's okay. And we're more relaxed with our later children. We're more uptight with our beginning. But then there are advantages to that too. We had more energy with our beginning. We didn't have so much energy with the last. So don't worry about it. Okay. All right. I'm glad. Thank you for joining me tonight. I better put my video back on. Thank you for sharing this last hour. I hope this was helpful to you. I think, parenting more than one child is a challenge, but it does pay off. If you can teach your kids how to problem solve, express their feelings, work things out when they're young, they're going to continue that on when you're not here anymore. And that is awesome. And same if you are a parent of one child, teaching your kids how to work it out with playmates and cousins is giving them a great relationship life skill. So feel free, keep in touch with me. I can be reached through my blogs, Facebook page, Facebook group, through Amazon, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and my website. So take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.